I can't hear you all. Thank you. If you've been blessed, stand to your feet. Thank you. We have been talking about flourishing. And flourishing this whole year, we are going to learn to flourish. And in flourishing, it takes a lot. How many believe that? Last month, we started off the month by talking about just what it meant to be flourished. We talked about the lotus flower that goes through so much, and then it emerges. And when it emerges, it's beautiful. It doesn't have any dirt. It doesn't have any stains. But the flower itself went through so much. The roots was different. How many people in here go through a whole lot to look like you look today? Hello? Do you look like what you've been through? No. Nobody looks. I hope and pray we don't look like what we've been through. Today, I am so excited because we're going to talk about flourishing in terms of faith, friends, and family. So it is so important for us to understand those concepts and what we need to do. I have the privilege of having some special guests, special people that I can call friends and colleagues. And I'm talking about, when we talk about relationships, these are the people I call. And I mean, I call them. I have, and many of you have met Suleiman. Anybody in here when he was here before? Anybody meet Suleiman? He's back. Suleiman is back. And not only is he back, he brought his lovely wife, Myra. And the Nuruddin, they're so powerful. They work a lot with individuals. They work with couples. But the main thing, they work with relationships. They're educators. They are educators in terms of educating people about what they need to know. And one of the things that I'm so proud of, not only does he work and Myra worked with women, they have worked, years with men. And if anybody are out there that has a mate that needs a little work, don't say anything, just sort of wave your hand. Hello, just sort of wave your hand. Hey, I understand. And the good thing is they will be secret. They will be back tomorrow for the ministry, the marriage ministry. So if you have to sort of dig up your significant other and bring them tomorrow. But today, if you have burning questions about relationships and flourishing in terms of faith, family, and friends, if you want to know how do you get beyond the hurt, how do you get beyond the depression, how do you get beyond all the things that we go through, if you want to know how, if you have a question at the end, we're going to try to save time for Q&A. But if you can't wait, write it down, and somebody will give me the questions on the things. And they have paper in the aisles, some pencils in the aisles. Write your questions down because we need to hear from you. So without any further ado, I want you to put your hands together. Everybody, let's give a warm welcome, a gigantic welcome to Suleiman and Myra. Thank you, Nuruddin. Thank you. Hello. And they look so young. They're so young and so gifted. You know what? When I grow up, I'm going to be just like them. Come on in. We want to have a conversation today. And we want to have a conversation about flourishing and about relationships. So first of all, I want to say thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
It's for sure. It's an honor to be here. Peace and love, everyone.
Again, to get them here on a Saturday, it is so, because their schedules are really, really busy. So we want them to pour into us as much as possible. We want to talk just about relationships, what you do best. And that is something we all can't avoid. I don't care if it's a relationship in terms of faith with God. I don't care if it's a relationship in terms of families with our spouses or significant others or our children, Or if it's a relationship with friends, it's all about relationships. And when we talk about the word flourish, what do you all think it takes for a relationship to flourish? Let's start there.
So Dr. Sherry, before we start, I want to show you that beginning was amazing, fantastic. I mean, just being out there in the audience and listening to the energy, the vibrations, it just felt so good. And I just want to take a moment and lift up each one of you for that. And all of you who were directly involved, you did a wonderful job of that. That was just amazingly beautiful. And it really felt great.
And I've heard about these Saturdays from my beautician, which is Lourdes Green right here.
Yay!
She did my hair today.
Hello.
Anyway, she's told me about it, and she didn't exaggerate. You guys are amazing.
Yeah.
It is amazing. Actually, again, I'm a little partial, but I say the church is entire every day. And the people, hello. Right. And they flourish, right?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, back to your question.
So what I was hearing you ask, Dr. Sherry, was related to the whole concept of flourishing. What does that look like? How does it work in family, in friends, relationships? And what I want to say is that we were not designed to be alone. God did not put us here on this earth to be an island. We are in relationship with each other. And in order for those relationships to flourish, we have to be able to recognize and understand the differences that exist. Each one of us brings a different truth, a different way of thinking, a different reality, a different moral code to everything we come to. We are the sum total of all of our individual experiences. The relationship I have with the most important person in my life, Myra, is I couldn't be with someone more different than me. I'm serious about that. I mean, it's like night and day almost. This is bright lights, big city. Country boy, tobacco town. Now think about that difference. Now, how does that flourish? How do you put somebody with the big lights and the big city with a country boy? So the thing, though, is that when we first see each other, none of that matters. What I do is I fall in love with this beautiful woman next to me, and the relationship starts. Well, in people that we meet, we have contacts with them, and a relationship starts. How does it flourish? It flourishes through our understanding with each other. Because it's not about agreeing with each other, it's about understanding each other. And how do we connect in that understanding is really, really important. So, how do you connect with someone who is so different than you? When I stop and think about it, if nobody's in the box but Suleiman will have an argument with Suleiman, and guess what? Suleiman will win. I ain't got no issues with him, and he ain't got none with me. We get along fine. However, when you put Myra in that box, everything shifts. Because Myra has her own truth. She has her own belief. She has her own way of seeing the world. And guess what? It's different than mine. So what do you do when two differences get in a box together? Think about relationships. How does that happen? That we fall or we make connections with each other, and I find out that that person is so different than me. How do we establish the friendship? How do we establish the relationship? How do we grow it? Knowing that the difference is there. And let me say that the difference don't show up right away.
Amen. The honeymoon period lasts for different lengths.
Yeah, and the thing is that we attract each other. And as we attract each other, a lot of times it's the representative that we attract. Because I'm going to tell you, I want her to see the best in me. And I want to see the best in her. Because love begins to happen. And when that happens, it begins to lay a foundation. So flourishing has to do with how am I navigating? How am I moving through? How am I creating space for us to learn from each other so that we might grow with each other and become more than who we are? Because God has it for each one of us to be so much more than who we are. Amen. Note that. Amen. You see, and that's why we are in relationships. So let me pause here.
That's okay. I noticed how polite Mara is. She didn't interrupt you, as we often do in relationships.
Yes.
Y'all notice that?
Yeah.
So that means that they have been flourishing for a long time. So she listens. But when you say all that, and Mara, as I'm listening to him, yeah, we tend to attract opposites sometimes.
Sure.
How do you respond? What would you add to that in terms of just flourishing and beginning to understand what it takes? Because sometimes it's like a garden. And if you plant something and the soil is not quite right, you have to work with it.
Yes.
For it to flourish. But it takes a lot of stuff for that to happen. And I know you put the work in.
Especially with this Georgia clay.
Especially this Georgia clay. You're right.
I think that for sure it's the commitment. Because when you first meet someone in a relationship and you're in that romantic part of the love, because the romantic love is where you seal that commitment, it's the bond. And then when the differences show up, you're already bonded with that. The commitment's there, but you have to do some work. It's work.
It is.
And it's good work. You have to recognize that you've got to stretch. And the Lord says, the Bible says, to get wisdom, and in getting the wisdom to get understanding. So the more I understand about our differences, it creates compassion and empathy for those differences, and we begin to make allowances and compromise.
So we have to stretch. Go ahead, Simone, you wanted to say something.
Coming up as I listen to you, Myra, is that how do we get to the understanding?
Yeah.
I mean, I hear you talk about understanding, but I have my way of seeing this, and you have your way of seeing this. How do we get to understanding?
And how do you define it?
If we both see it differently, hello? I mean,
anybody
you
out
have
there?
a way of seeing it, and I got a way of seeing it. How do we get to understanding? So,
and Mara, you may want to chime in that. I think this is what you're talking about in terms of communication and commitment.
Absolutely. It's about being able to communicate constructively and not in the destructive way that we can talk to one another. To begin to quiet oneself and to be able to hear, because we often don't listen.
right.
We often listen to respond.
So,
And not, you say A, I say B, you say C, I say, it's like a diatribe.
in fact, when you're talking to me, I'm busy thinking about how I'm going to respond to that. When am I going to interrupt? At what moment do I say, okay, I got it?
Or Suleiman,
And I haven't even heard what was said.
it's like putting bullets in the chamber of a gun. You're like, okay, I got something for that. I got something for that. Got something for that.
And that pull and push, and it's so funny because sometimes in communicating and learning how to get to understand each other, but if you're already on a scale from 1 to 10, and 10 being the highest, like off the chain, and you're already at an 8, how do you pull it back down to a 1? How do you pull it back down to, how do you make that to understand and to communicate?
So it took me the longest time to understand that. Because there would be times when Myra would come to me and she'd have,
Not Mara.
I mean, it would be really important to her. And she would come and she would just start, and I'm sitting here dizzy because I don't know if I should pull out the flat screwdriver or the Phillip, you know, and I didn't need to do any of that. So sometimes I would say to Myra, what are you needing from me right now? Now, what does that do? What does that do? That slows down reactivity. You see, it's hard to react and listen at the same time. And when you experience someone who is really excited in their delivery, they're passionate with what they're saying. They sometimes may be speaking in a different tone, sometimes a different tongue too. But you know, it shows up. And how do we slow that down so we can get to what needs to be said? And what I've learned when I ask Myra, what does she need from me? I also shift in my thinking too. Because now I'm saying, I got to really listen, Suleiman, and not be quick to respond. And that's hard because I'm a very reactive person. I can go, Dr. Sherry, from 0 to 100 in a second.
And a lot of people can do that. And one of the things that's funny is, as I'm listening to you say that, most of the time people are thinking about a comeback as opposed to really listening. It's like, okay, how am I going to respond? And as you're processing the comeback, you didn't hear the question or get the point.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And when Suleiman would say that, Myra, what are you needing from me? I'd go, oh, what is it I need? It would slow me down.
That's right.
Yeah, I would go, oh, well, yeah.
But do you worry about, even if a person told you what they need, wonder if you can't deliver?
Right. So that's a very good point.
Mm-hmm.
The key, though, is being able to express what I need. And how many of us do that? You know, I'm expecting, I mean, gee whiz, we've been together a long time. You should know what I need. You should be able to fix it. I shouldn't have to tell you all that. Well, that's not true, y'all. I don't live with no crystal ball.
Hello.
You know, so how then do we begin to talk about what we need? How do we begin to share what I'm desiring, what I'm wanting, what I would like to have in a relationship with you? How do I talk about that? Well, the first thing is I got to feel safe with you.
Mm-hmm.
You see, if I don't feel safe with you, I'm not going to allow myself to open up and be vulnerable. Come on.
That's right.
Because you'll take advantage of me. So I'm going to keep my guards up, my blocks up, my defenses up. But when I feel safe, all of that drops. And I'm able to show up in a way that I can acknowledge my hurt, my pain, my fear, my uncertainty, my inadequacies. You know, I can talk about that and not have to worry about you later on. So I see you're acting just like your daddy. Mm-hmm. I knew you had your mama in you. Well,
None of us would dare
you
say
see,
that.
I mean, come on. You know, so that's the fear we carry.
Yeah.
And so how do we get past that? How do I let Myra know that she's safe with me? And sometimes that means putting me aside. Hear me now. Sometimes it means putting me aside so I can really listen and be present in her reality. Because she does carry a truth, and it is different than mine. Relationships are not about agreements.
Say that again.
Relationships are not about agreements.
Love.
Because it's not about your way or my way or the highway.
Right.
It's about understanding.
That's right.
And I will focus on that word for a long time because the more I understand about this grown woman and the little girl who's inside of her, the closer we become. And listen, Because the little girl never dies. The little boy never dies. They're always there. And there will be moments when that little boy will say, do something about this. Don't you take that. We've been through this before. Take care of me. And I, as the grown man now, reacts to that. And then I realized that I responded in a way that was not pleasant, not safe. I was more aggressive than I could have been passionate. So I say these things to you to know that what I have learned is that when Myra is talking with me or with anyone, I've been in the room with some of the most angriest men in the world. When they are talking to me, if I can slow my reactivity down and be present with their truth, they drop the bars. And we're able to communicate in a way that we weren't before. I hope that makes sense, because it's a lot of work involved in that.
It does, because what you're telling us, if I hear you correctly, stop and think before you talk. Anybody ever been told that? Hello? Stop. I used to do this thing with kids. I would say, stop, think, and listen. And you have to do that. Stop, think, and listen, because so often we don't listen and we don't stop. And as women, you use an adjective that I think that we all can relate as females. Sometimes when we talk, we are passionate. We're very passionate, but sometimes that tone gets misinterpreted.
Yes.
Anybody can relate to that? Hello? So when it gets misinterpreted, it adds to the conflict, or it adds to the misunderstandings. So in your I'm sorry.
No, you own it.
I was about to say, in your 23 years of marriage plus, 29, ooh, Lord, I don't want to take any years away. Because you worked for those years,
Yes,
right?
Yes, you did.
How do you get to a point of just being level?
For me, it was, we've done a lot of work, counseling, therapy ourselves I've learned how to, it's not what I say, it's how I say it. And also my facial expressions, because oftentimes people, you're communicating more than just your words. It's your face, it's your body language is saying a lot. So for me, it's helped a lot to keep my tone at a certain level and to carefully think about what I'm saying to you. And I've got more results that way.
Yeah. So, Sherry, I want to add just a little bit to that before you. I know you got a bunch of stuff in your hand already. Okay. It won't take but a second. One of the things that I learned from Myra was that Myra was the youngest of 6 children. The 5 older ones were all brothers. All brothers. Now imagine what it was for this little girl to get her voice heard through all these brothers. So I'm imagining there was time that she had to be really loud. She had to really get their attention. She had to do things to really get connected. So there are moments that her passion to be heard, her desire to be understood, her desire to be listened to comes off very strong. Well, for me, in response to what you're saying, Sherry, I learned that the best thing for me to control my reactivity around that is that I've learned this skill called mirroring. The moment Myra says something to me, I'll say, so now, let me just make sure I'm getting this right, sweetheart. This is what I'm hearing you say. And repeat back exactly. Putting your spin on it without twisting it around, all right, without paraphrasing. Be a parrot. Why is that valuable? Why is it valuable to do that? Well, first of all, it lets that person know that you're listening. Whoa, he heard me. It also gives that person an opportunity to say, well, that's not exactly what I was saying. This is what I really want you to hear. So it works both ways for us. And that's really important. So one of the things that I have learned to do is to slow it down by repeating back what I'm hearing Myra say.
And that's a good point because sometimes it's hard to say back what the other person has said if you're not listening.
Yes,
And you
exactly.
have to be able to listen and take the emotional part out of it. We talk a lot about relationships in terms of our significant others. What about relationships in terms of friends, in terms of even children? And I know we have some questions regarding that because you have had a blended family. I've had a blended family. Many of you have had blended family. So we start talking about relationships in terms of family members, in terms of children. How do you deal? How is that different?
So for me, it's not.
Okay.
I will use that same tool, whether I'm with the children or whether I'm with a friend or whether I'm with someone I don't even know yet. Because there's something about that tool. I tell you, one of the greatest things in the world is to be heard. I mean, you can walk into a room and somebody calls your name. Where's that person at? It's just something about someone recognizing you and acknowledging you that shifts everything. The playing field changes. So if you can let somebody know that you value them enough, that you really listen to what they're saying, something happens. That doesn't mean that you're going to run into somebody who's going to say, well, what's wrong with you? Why are you talking like that? You can say, because you're important to me.
That's right.
And I want you to know that what you say is important to me.
And Dr. Sherry, in terms of the blended family, I married a man with 10 children. I have one.
Ooh,
And
Well, how did she
that's
do
a
that?
whole testimony
that's
in itself.
love.
We,
And I didn't have a sign on.
I wasn't
She
thinking.
chose to do that. Now, I want you to know I didn't.
However, early on, before we got married, we sat down and realized that we were going to have to be a team. We were going to have to be a united front because children, be it blended or birth, can be divisive.
Manipulative.
So what I found and what I so admired in Suleiman is that he took that conversation really seriously. And then one day when we were with all of the children, he said, I want you to know that nothing has changed. I'm Mary and Myra. I love you. That will never change. However, Myra is my wife and she comes first. And that was so powerful. I was like, wow.
So powerful.
It didn't change anything for them, and then we began to model that in front of them, that we might get a call and say, hey, Dad, I need $100 or $500, whatever. And he would say, well, I'll tell you what, let me talk with Myra. I'll get back with you.
You
and we
see
kept
that?
doing that.
Hello.
We kept doing that. And then one time, one of my daughter-in-laws said, I like the way you and Dad do that. And they do it now. They do it now.
Yeah.
It's being a team, even if you don't agree, to be a united front in front of the children and say, let's get back with it, then we talk it out.
Yes.
But they need to see that whoever the biological parent is has to support, be it the husband, whoever you marry, you need to support them. And hopefully you marry someone that you trust. Because I said to Suleiman, because we made a whole lot of changes. And I remember sharing with Suleiman that I will never say anything to you about your children that is not true. I'm on the out, I can see you're in it. I'm objective.
True, yeah.
So I can see things that need to change, that I would think that you need to change. And then he would. And then there were times he said, now, Myra, if you think about it, I've changed a lot of things. I just have to be sure of what I'm doing because these are my children. And I could respect that. And so I did. And so then again, these are the things I learned to say, to learn how to share without, oh, she's just selfish. To say, well, Suleiman, I was just thinking. And I would frame it in a way that he could hear it. Because there's something about your children that your blood will rise up. Those are my children. That's my son. But if you can learn to use your wording correctly, with grace, with season, changes can happen.
Those points are so important. And I'm smiling because you said, get on that united front. If kids know, it's not just children. If your friends know that you're on one page,
That's right.
That's right. You're not going to have as much of a problem. But when people know that you're divided, they will run a train right through it.
Yeah, be it in-laws, be it friends, be it family members. Yep, they have to, you're correct.
And it has to, be, but the key is you all got together.
Yes.
And you said, this is how we're going to play this.
Right.
And we're not going to do anything or say anything about the other's child, or we're not playing those games.
Right.
And so often people play games. And it becomes a game playing situation, because what happens is if they are not committed, if they have not communicated, if they don't understand, then it divides everybody, and it's chaotic. Exactly. It is absolutely chaotic. Let's talk a little bit in terms of the faith part. How do you grow your faith? How do you flourish in a relationship in terms of faith?
So, Sherry, I'm going to get to faith. But
Okay.
I want to just add one little point.
Absolutely.
Oftentimes when we're talking with parents, I will say to a parent that the most important thing a child needs is to know that there's a team. And that team is mommy and daddy. That they can't break that team. You see, I know daddy loves me. I know mommy loves me. But I need to know that mommy and daddy loves me. Okay? So mommy is not going to say, well, okay, why don't you go ahead and do that then? She's going to say, well, let me check with dad about that. And dad's going to say, well, I like that idea. Let me check with mommy about that. They need to see early on that they're working with a team. They have a responsibility growing up. And that responsibility is to push the limit, to push the envelope, to challenge whatever's in front of them. And they find a way to do that. That's what little people do. And if they find the divide between mom and dad, they done found the gold.
That's right. And they will play it.
And they will work it, no question. So I say to you, be a team. Support each other in the decision-making process. Don't, well, mama was wrong. We're not going to do it like that. That is not healthy. They need to see the two of you working together. That is so important for the child or the children. So I just wanted to put that in there.
And the faith part, that for me...
But before we get to the faith, then we had to back it up a little bit. Just hold that thought for a minute. Because I want to add to something Suleiman just said. A lot of parents out here, a lot of women are single parents. And they have to co-parent, if possible, with someone that may not be around.
Right.
But it's still important to communicate.
Yes.
It's still important to get on one page, because what happens is there's going to be a good guy and a bad guy. And if you're the custodian parent, you're usually going to be the bad guy.
Right. That's right. And I'll tell you, little people are paying attention to you.
That's right.
You see, they're not coming up with a piece of paper and doing an inventory. What is this thing called man? What is this thing called woman? What is this thing called wife or husband or partner? They're not doing that. They're paying attention using their eye gates and ear gates. And that is formulating who they're becoming. Because at some point, they will take you into a relationship because they are the sum total of both the positive and negative experiences they had with you. And in a situation where mom and dad are not together, it is very important that you never put the man or the woman down.
Thank you.
You work that out with them, but you don't let that child see that.
Right.
You let the child know that even though mommy and daddy are not together, we respect each other. We love each other. And sometimes that's challenging because sometimes one person is carrying a pain deeper than the other person. And that pain gets in the way of them being able to be as civil or as compassionate or as empathetic as they could be. And you have to work with that. Let the child see the best of you.
You always say something, make sure, and I really like that, what you say, make sure your side of the street is squeaky clean. Because we have, we have had issues with the mother of the children. And maybe, in our case, the mothers. And we did that same thing. We stayed united. And no matter how ugly that mom might get, we stayed civil, we stayed kind.
Yes.
And one day, one of the daughters said to me, I don't listen to what mama said about you and dad anymore. Because I said, Mama, Myra and dad have only been nice to you because we were. No, if she spoke or didn't speak, we did.
That's right.
We showed up in love, and that's where the faith came in.
That's right. And that is so important, that regardless of what the other person, you stay true to you. And you speak, and you do, and you go on. And let them see that. But don't get caught up in their game. And faith does become a part of that. What would you say to that in terms of building the faith and flourishing in that way in a relationship?
Well, I know that, in a relationship, well, first of all, God is the foundation of everything in my life, Suleiman's life. And so we're reading from this same word, the same principles. Of course, we're not perfect. Nobody is.
Suleiman's not perfect?
No, he's not.
Oh, no, Myra, you shouldn't say this up here.
That's news to me. I thought I was.
But he has
And she said it in public, too.
He has a more quiet and gentler way, which I always admired about him. He's very peaceful. But I remember, because of the word, and some of our children are not all Christians. Most of them are. But I remember one of the sons, having some issue with one of the sons who really wanted his mom to be with Suleiman. And so he was acting ugly towards me a lot. And so one day because I learned about forgiveness. And I called him up one day and I said, I don't know what it is I've done, but could you forgive me?
Wow.
And he said yes, and we were fine after that. I had to take the ignition out of the fire or the bomb.
Bomb, yeah.
I had to pull that out.
Right.
Sometimes you have to take the low road in order to get a better.
That is such a good point, because forgiveness is such a key. And to be able to say that, or to be able to hear that, is real, especially when you feel a certain way or you get caught up in your feelings. Say, wait a minute. But you've got to be able to have that faith and to believe, to be able to step forward.
Exactly. Suleiman, one time when things were just getting started, and I think one of the moms made me mad. And I said, I'm never going to forgive them. I'm just never going to forgive them. And so I said, oh, Myra, forever is such a long time. He says, God sees what you do. he sees what we do. That's what's important. And I was like, you know, and I got right. He was right.
And he's right. And you know, a lot of times, and that's something else. Do we acknowledge the other person when we know they're right? And see, sometimes in a relationship, we hear them, we know they're right, but because we're so stuck in where we are, it's hard to say, you know, you're right. Or I need to shift. I need to change. I need to do something different.
Yes, yes. You have to be open to that.
Ah,
Yeah, to showing that. And I've said that often to Suleiman.
Yeah.
Have you said it much to me?
I'm sorry, I got lost for a moment.
He has. I'm just
But
teasing.
the thing that's coming up for me, though, Dr. Sherry, forgiveness to me is a tricky thing. And I'll tell you why. When I do something that hurts someone, I don't know the depth of the pain. I don't know how hurtful that was to that person. I don't have to carry that part of it. And I sometimes want to get over it. You know, I want to get past it. I don't need to keep hearing about it. Every time I come up, you're bringing it up. It happened 5 years ago. Why are you still bringing it up?
that's none of us in here is,
You know,
none of the.
No, I know I'm not talking
No.
about. Y'all
Nobody brings up old stuff, right?
Just hear me through. I know it's not about y'all. It's the thing about it, though, is that sometimes the hurt is so deep, and it's not going to get healed until we acknowledge it.
It's so true.
Now, in saying acknowledge, I'm not talking about the person who was hurt acknowledging it.
Right.
I'm talking about the person who created the pain.
That's right.
Being able to go to that person and say, you know, I realized when I raised my voice at you and I criticized you and I put you down. I even called you that ugly name. You didn't deserve any of that. I was wrong for that. And I want you to know how sad I am for what I did. That should have never happened to you. And I want you to know that I will spend a lot of my life making sure that that never happens to you again. Drop the mic. You see, it's something like that that can create a healing, Dr. Sherry.
Absolutely.
That forgiveness can happen.
That's right.
And while I know that forgiveness has a lot to do with us, in terms of us, you know, letting go, not carrying the weight, the pain, all that kind of stuff, I also have work to do.
Yeah, and we all have work to do.
Yeah.
And in relationships, it's not a let's do it today and stop. It's a continuous thing.
Yes.
And I think a lot of times we said, you know, I did that yesterday. I did that last month. I told him that, or I told her. But no, it's a process, and it's an ongoing process.
Yes. Every time it comes up. Because, again, not knowing the depth of the pain, I can't say, well, why are you bringing it up again?
That's right. Why are you still hurt?
Exactly. Every time it comes up, I have a responsibility to let you know that I am no longer that person. And I'm working to make sure that what I did never happens again. And I have to repeat that over and over every time. Not put it out, not stun it, not try to dismiss it, but to embrace it. And that makes a difference.
Makes a major difference. One of the things, I know we have we have several questions, and I want to make sure, especially you took the time to write it down. And if you have questions and want to raise your hand, feel free. But one question I want us to answer is, someone says, when my kids respond more to my husband than to me, how do I fight for their affection?
So what I'm hearing, the question is that
when my
children,
the children respond more to the husband, to her husband, than to her.
Right.
Now she feels like she has to fight for attention.
Exactly.
Or affection.
Exactly. What comes up for me around that, Sherry, is what am I saying to my husband?
That's
Am I coming to him and saying, you know, I need to share with you a challenge that I'm having in the relationship. I need to share with you something that is really confusing and not clear to me. I really need to share with you something that I'm experiencing. Find a way to make it about I.
That's right.
Not about you don't.
That's right.
But about I. Mm-hmm. And what I'm experiencing is that I find myself alone. I find myself abandoned. I find myself hurt when the children always show up and not invite me, and I'm not invited in to that moment. Now, notice how I did that, Sherry.
I noticed.
I did it without pointing the finger at you at all.
That's right.
You see, there's something about a conversation like this that we have to keep invited. If I start pointing the finger at you, what are you going to do? Your bars are going to go up.
That's right.
You're going to start wanting to defend yourself. I don't need you to do that right now. I need you just to hear what I'm needing in this relationship for us to do together.
I have one thing about that. When we used to go, after the children were young 20s, and we'd go visit them in their home, in particular, they say, Dad, what would you like to eat tonight? What would you like to do? Dad, what movie would you like to see? And that would hurt. I would feel, it was like I wasn't there, like I was invisible. So I shared that with Suleiman. And what Suleiman began to do was to defer to me. They'd say, Dad, what would you like to eat? He'd say, just a moment, Myra, what would you like to eat? We want to go see a movie. You defer to, if you can have a talk with your husband about that he could begin to defer to you. Wait a minute, let's see what mommy has to say about this. Wait a minute, let's check with mommy. That will help.
And that is so important because it brings back and shifts the direction, center front, your unit.
Yes.
And that's the message you want to send. I have another question. This person says, I have kids. Now I don't have a life. Anybody else feel like that? I become frustrated. They become frustrated. How to recope?
That's a great one. That's a great one, because what happens is that children come into our life. And when they come in and we're the gateway for them coming into this world, all of a sudden our life shifts and we focus on that child. And what happens is that we get lost. I've had men to tell me, you know, Suleiman, I came home the other day and the bags were in the front door packed. I said, what do you mean? Well, you know, our children are going off to college now. And I came home and my wife had her bags packed. And she told me, she said, I'm going to find myself now. All these years, I've put me aside to make sure you and the children got what they wanted. And now I'm going to find me. Never lose sight of who you are.
That's right. Never. That's right.
It happens in a relationship. All of a sudden, well, this is my wife. This is my husband. Well, who is that? That's my wife. My wife this, my wife that. This is Myra.
That's right.
We are joined together. She's the wife in my life. But this is Myra. And I say this especially to men, because we get caught up in this sense of ownership, possession. You're my wife. Well, hello?
Hello.
You know, and I think that's really important to think about. Always find ways to keep you. It doesn't mean that you separate yourself from the relationship. You make you part of the relationship. I fell in love with Myra. I didn't fall in love with my wife. You see, when I'm walking down the corridors of O'Hara, and some man hollers out, Myra, and comes running over and gives her a big hug, I just sit back and smile. I said, that's the Myra I fell in love with. And he wish he could. Huh? So good. Myra's reminding me about how do you stay connected with the children and still have your life. You let the children know.
So Myra, excuse me, Myra does what we all do as women. We sort of put them back on track. Is it?
Yeah, I can run, y'all. That's what I love about her.
The young lady wants to know how does she stay connected. The children,
You
she's
think
frustrated.
this is something? You should see us in session when I'm ready to move on. And she's saying, no, Suleiman, we need to stay right here a little bit longer. The children. Okay, so what Myra's saying, what I want to say about the children is this. And she's feeling frustrated. You have a talk with your children and say, I want you to know that every Tuesday afternoon, I'm going to the gym. Every Wednesday evening, I'm going to meet with my friends at the church. Or you let them know what's happening, that you too have a life. And they're okay with that. And you work it out with with your partner, that they have a role in that and they know you have a life. Even if they're not together, it may be that the weekends that they're away or something, but you find yourself and let that be a priority in your life.
It's important to have a support system,
Yeah.
maybe, a good friend, your mom. I mean, everything's not ideal.
Right.
But some way to get some time for yourself.
Sure.
Even if it's just a one day.
Exactly.
And I talk about self-care. And a lot of times as women, and I'm not saying men don't, but mostly women, we find ourselves taking care of everybody.
Yes.
And everything.
Yes.
And we are the last person we even consider taking care of if we get a chance to. And I say self-care, it's not a luxury, it's a necessity.
Yes.
Because if you break down, everything else is going to break down.
That's right.
So if you're frustrated and the kids are frustrated, it's just going to keep rolling.
It's gonna carry over, yeah.
their kids' frustration is going to escalate because yours is not under control, and you can't get yours under control because you're not taking care of self.
That's right.
Yeah,
yes.
we have a daughter that does everything. And I tell her, just step back.
Yeah.
Find a way for yourself. I mean, we try to support her. She needs to, oftentimes ladies get in these marriages, and the man's, she's doing everything. She's cooking, she's working, she's taking the kids to this, taking them to that. Sometimes you've got to delegate some of those duties.
Absolutely. And not feel guilty.
Exactly.
Of course.
And learn to say no. Anybody in here
Hello?
have a hard time saying no?
It's the new yes, Sherry.
Yeah.
It's
No,
the new yes.
Yes, you're absolutely
no
right.
to that and yes to yourself.
That's it. And that's what you have to remember to do, because it's so hard for us to do that
Yes.
sometimes. I have another question. Somebody said, I'm single. How do I find a mate? You said I'm not to be alone. Ooh, they bringing your words back to you. Somebody said, ooh.
Yeah. Somebody's listening.
They were listening to you. And they're absolutely right. We're not to be alone. But I'm gonna throw in, but we're not to be with anyone in the
Right.
process of trying not to be alone. Hello, just don't
Exactly.
accept anything.
It's one thing to be alone, it's another thing to be lonely.
And we gotta define the difference.
That's
Yes.
right.
And that's an interesting point, because I think a lot of people are lonely, or they may be alone, but they don't have to be lonely, because you have to sort of define what you're looking for.
Yes.
And since I think that was directed to you, Suleiman, I'm gonna.
Yeah. So one piece to add to that. This so-called alone time is an opportunity.
Yeah.
An opportunity to look in the mirror. What am I wanting?
That's right.
What am I needing? What am I desiring in a relationship? You've been some places already.
That's right.
This may not be your first rodeo. So take a moment and check that experience. What did you learn about yourself from that experience? What were the takeaways? What did you learn that can enhance you as you go forward into the next relationship? Because the clearer you get about who you are and what your needs are, you're just simply making yourself available for someone else in a different kind of way.
Amen.
And you don't have to look so hard either, because you will begin to personify that. It will show up in your aura and who you are. So allow yourself to take that time to grow and not rush yourself. If it's been a long time that you've been looking, then maybe you're not looking in the right place.
And God knows it. God knows the desires of your heart. He knows the desire. I'm interrupting.
Yeah,
God
no.
God knows the desires of your heart. When I was single and divorced, I was like, well, Lord, I just want somebody to walk through the mall and hold my hand.
Yeah.
Is that too much to ask? You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's just real. That's just being transparent. And so what I began to do is I began to be with me and learn how to be with me. I would go to a matinee. I would go to a museum. I would just do things. I learned to be with me.
Happy with me.
Very good.
And then I saw this guy one day and I was like, okay.
Yeah. She was coming and I was running.
That's funny. And I think just utilizing that time being alone to really examine self.
Yes.
And to get to know who you are and
Yes.
what you really want. So the first thing comes along, you don't say, oh, that must be it, because you don't know who you are, because you have to get to know who you are before you can enter a relationship.
I knew that I wanted a faithful, loyal, committed partner. And that's what God gave me.
Scary. All right. I have one more question. And I don't know if anybody in the audience have a question, because we have somebody will get a microphone to her in just 1 second. Somebody said they have a teen, and you all with kids, everybody in here, if they hang around alone, they're gonna become teenagers. They said, how do I cope with teens who want only their way? How do I respond to them?
So, how do you respond to a young person who demonstrates and shows that they only want to do it their way? Get curious with them. Get curious with them and find out what their way is. So when, I'm trying to think of an example, but if someone says that, well, I want to do this and this is how I want to do it, simply go back to the technique I said earlier. So what I'm hearing you say is that you want to do this and this is how you want to do it. Am I getting that right? Yeah, that's what I said. Tell me more about your thinking about that. Find out what is also pushing that. Learn from them, okay? Again, their little brains are growing. They say most of the time that the brain is not fully developed until it's around 25, 30 years old, somewhere in that range. So there's a lot of growth that's taking place. Teenagers are still seeking to find their place in all of this. And they're coming to you, the most important person, to test it out on.
Absolutely.
And they're going to do that with you. Get curious with them. Learn about what they're thinking, how they're processing it, who they're listening to, where it's coming from. Give yourself as much information as you can. And then, once you've heard them through, listen to what they've said and say, that makes sense. And validate the parts of it that make sense. Doesn't mean you agree with it. It does mean that you're hearing them and you're validating their place with it. And then you say to them, so this is what comes up for me. Mm-hmm. And then bring you into the picture.
I think the key is listening to them.
Of course.
And being able to have them to really understand that you hear them. Not necessarily agree, but listen. We have a question in the audience. Thank you.
Yes.
Hi. First, I want to say thank you, because the jewels you are dropping is amazing. The questions that everybody asked has been awesome. So a lot of my questions have already been answered based on everything that you've said and questions that have been asked. I have 2 sons, my oldest son and my youngest son, and they both have mental and emotional disabilities. And it has been very difficult as a single mom with no dads around to try to deal with these two men on different levels. One almost 30, one is 11. How do I deal with that and not be emotional? How do I check me in the situation long enough and strong enough to listen accurately to what they're saying?
One of the things, I'm sorry, were you about to say something?
No.
Okay. I appreciate your question because you can definitely get lost, and especially when you have someone in the family with special needs.
Yes.
And what has to happen is you got to develop a village. You got to find a support system because with two kids with different age ranges, is it's really hard. So once you have developed a support system, and a support system may look different for different people, but it may mean that if you have someone, depending on the level of disability, that can say, listen, I need to take a day. Can you watch them? Can you spend the time? Is there a place that I can have them, a respite for them? Then you go away. You get some sleep. You sit down and pull yourself. And I know that emotional, as mothers, we're always emotional, most of us. But how do you pull that out and understand this is not about me, but I need to do what's in the best interest of these kids so I can help myself?
So I like that a lot, Sherry. And Dr. Sherry, what's coming to me real clearly is the concept of a support system.
Absolutely.
We live in a very technological world. And this is what I love about our God. Continually provides for us. In all these years that have gone by, continually to provide for us. You can Google right now what your son may be dealing with and ask, where are the support groups that are there for that? And find one for yourself so that you can know I'm not doing this by myself. There are other people in the world who are experiencing the same kinds of things. If I can connect with them, it's highly possible that I will learn what I can do to not only help myself, but also to help the son in my life too. And that would be very valuable because there are also agencies, organizations that can support him, especially the 30-year-old. And then you begin to focus on the 11-year-old and what kinds of things he may need. However, finding that center for yourself first is most important. Because if not, you will burn out and you will not be of help to anyone.
Absolutely.
And that's really important. Yes.
Absolutely. And I appreciate your question. We're going to take one more. I know it was one other person, and then we're going to have to wrap it up. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Sherry, Dr. Sudamai, and Maya. I want to just continue that question that woman of God asked about being single, okay? I myself was a single parent, never got married, okay? I put my life on back whole until my daughter got her degrees, and now in the last 2 weeks, she got married. So it's my time again. It's for me. But in 2 months, I turned 65. Where do I begin now? Where do I start for my mate, for my life?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Okay, let me repeat that question. My understanding is you are single.
I can repeat.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing you say is that here you are in your lifetime now at 65 years old. You've spent your whole life as a single parent, making sure that the daughter in your life received all her needs. And now she's just gotten recently married. And here you are now realizing that I'm still alone and I want to do something with myself now. What do I do now at 65?
That's right.
How do I go about a relationship?
In starting my life.
Did I get most of that? Oh, okay. That's the question.
Oh, Neil, you want her to answer?
I just told you how to mirror it back. I didn't say how to answer it.
All right. Okay, go
You
ahead.
got a thought, Myra?
Well, I think take the age out of the equation.
Hmm.
I'm going to be 79 this month, next month, May. And I mean, I'm just saying, we're building a new home. I'm doing things even though we're getting older, we're still alive. God has blessed us to be here. God has blessed you to be here healthy. To look on it, I mean, life's not over. It's like finding activities that you like to do. Wasn't Sarah really old when she had the baby? Sarah, I mean, talk to me, help me.
Wait a minute.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
people were older and they were blessed. They were blessed. They were blessed in the Bible.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
and so I just wouldn't worry. It's a lot of, I know a lot of my sisters, a lot of single women I know that are in their 60s now. And I think the same thing is to just find things that you like to do.
Right.
You know, find interests that you like. And God, and you're here in church, you got the foundation, you got God, you got Jesus. So he's got your back.
Yeah.
Just begin to create things for yourself that you enjoy doing.
And one of the things that happens, I think, a lot of times when we put our life on hold, become moms and a lot of times at 65, you may just be coming into who she is. So you have to find out who you really are because no longer a mom, of a young kid. So your roles have changed. And so the definition of who you are is going to change.
Yes.
And so we need to look, which also flows right into, I said that was the last question, but I was handed a couple more. So I'm going to get them very quickly. Someone said, and this is a very important question and it goes similar to this. This person went from a girlfriend to a wife and now a widow. How do I go back to girlfriend and not being a wife? That's a powerful question.
Yeah.
Because those are transitions in life. Those are transitions you go through. And all of a sudden, when you go through the transition of becoming a widow, it's like, now what do I do? Do I go back to being the girlfriend? How do I navigate this?
It's almost like you've completed a cycle.
Right.
And now I've got to start the cycle again. And it does tie into the question of the 65-year-old. And what I want to say about it is, where are you positioning yourself? And what do I mean by that? Do you volunteer? Do you go to activities that you really like and enjoy and you're consistent with that? Do you find yourself doing some things that really excite you? Not just, well, I go to church and then I go back home. Do we go to the gym? Do we volunteer at the shelter? Do we deliver food? What are we doing with ourselves in our spare time that puts me in a place to meet, to come across, to find the possibilities? So sometimes we're proactive about it in terms of getting out in your community and finding, not so much that I'm going out today to look for it, but I'm going down to the new art exhibit that's taking place down at the center today. And I'm going to walk around the art place. Who knows? That may be the moment. It may be that, especially in the summertime here in Atlanta, there's so many activities going on. Stuff's happening in the park. There's all sorts of music gatherings and things that are happening. How am I showing up for some of those things? What is my friendship looking like with my community? Mm-hmm. Who am I connecting with in my community? Do I have girlfriends that I do things with? And how are we doing things together? Live your life. Don't get caught in this moment of aloneness. God has for you what's going to be for you. It's seasonal. And we don't know the season. Don't give up.
And let me say this. I have a friend that's in my age realm, and she goes to samba dances. When I talk to her, she's going to do this. She's going, and I feel bad. I'm like, she she's doing things that she likes to do.
living.
Yeah.
She's a widow.
Yeah.
And I admire her for that.
It's
And
just,
your friends are important. I have a girlfriend that she doesn't like to go out and do things. So she's my friend. She's my spiritual friend. I love her. Yet I have other friends that like to do things. I want to be around her, but I also have to have a balance because I learn. The saying is going: if you're the smartest person in your group, you need to get a new group. Find people that are doing things that excite you. I like to learn. I like to be around friends that not only can learn from me, but that I can learn from them.
Absolutely. And also with that, which is a combination of what both of you said, and back to the lady that is a widow, life is not over for you.
no, not at
You
all.
learn to live, learn who you are, learn to do some things, and understand all friends are, you have friends for
Sure.
different reasons and different seasons and it's okay. It's okay. I had problems. I'm not in control. I have a couple more just dire questions. So these are the last two.
Okay, it's
Good.
fine.
This is good.
We're fine.
Okay.
I enjoyed it.
This one is really important. It says, what do you do when your adult children, and I'm talking about adult children, try to come between you and your spouse, causing trouble in the family and refuse to let you see the grandchildren?
Ouch.
Oh my
Ouch.
goodness. That's real, isn't it? That's rough.
Yeah.
Oh,
So what do you do
You have adult
when your
children.
adult children in your life come between you and your desire to be or to see the grandchildren?
And they come between you and your spouse and they refuse to let you see your grandchildren.
because they don't care for the spouse.
Right, apparently.
Apparently.
Well, that for me,
It's almost like blackmail, isn't it?
I'm sorry, what?
It's almost like blackmail. It's like
The
you don't do
children, the
this.
grandchildren are
Hostage.
used as pawns.
Yeah, they're
The grandchildren are
It's
being used
sad.
as pawns. It is sad.
It is really sad that that happens. There's some healing that needs to be done in that relationship. Someone is carrying pain and they don't know how to express the pain. So they act it out in a way that using the children. And that is so sad to me because the children are the ones who lose out.
That's right.
It may be that you have to be the big person and go to that person and say, look, I realize that over the years, something shifted somewhere, and I don't know what it is. And I know that today it gets in the way of me having time with the grandchildren in my life, and I want to be part of their life. So I would like to listen and hear from you. What is it that you're needing from me to help this shift? Go to that person. Allow yourself to be vulnerable with that person and set it up. I just want to talk. I don't want to argue. I don't want to fuss. I don't want to fight. And I just need to know what needs to shift for us. It's a thought. It's an idea. Because that person is hurting somewhere.
And it is the pain. It's the pain that creates, that promotes and keeps them creating conflict between you and your spouse.
Yes.
It's their own pain that creates them holding the grandchildren hostage, which brings the very last question, and we are through. What does forgiveness look like?
Well, for me, when I think about how God has forgiven me, it took me a lot of work to get to this place. To me, it looks like when I was getting divorced, I knew I needed to forgive my ex-husband, but it was very hard. And I got down on my knees and I was weeping. I said, God, I can't do this. You've got to do this for me. I can't do it. Help me, please. And he helped me to forgive to the point, I don't even remember all the things that happened. I think you just have to go deep in your, but what does it look like? It looks like freedom to me. It looks like,
Freedom. That's a good
I
point.
yeah.
Excellent. Freedom.
Yeah, because if not, every time you think about what that person did, what they said, something shoots through your body,
Yeah.
you know.
And Suleiman, you want to add to this as we close? Of course. What did I say?
You know, sometimes, Dr. Sherry, I would say to couples that we're working with, especially couples that still have their parents in their life, and after I've done the exploration work, I'll ask, have you ever talked with your mom or your dad about what it was like for you to grow up with them?
Good question.
What was it like for you to grow up with them? And I say that to say this, that forgiveness for me, if it is something that I really want, that is on my heart enough that is really saying I need to do it, then I will take it upon myself to go to that person and say, I need to talk to you about something that I've been carrying, something that I have been concerned about for a long time now. And I realized that there was a time when I had this experience, and the experience would be whatever it was I had with that person. I would name the experience without saying you did anything. There was a time when I had this experience, and I'd named the experience. And I said, that experience has weighed heavily on my heart. And I have been really wanting to talk more about that. And I'd like to hear from you about what comes up when I say this to you.
Right.
Create a space. Create an opportunity for that person to engage with you. Now, if you feel that it's not safe to do that with that person, if you feel that that person, well, I won't say won't listen, but if you feel that you're not safe with that person or maybe that person's already gone. I mean, how many of us still carry the pain of people who are no longer with us?
Absolutely.
How do we have those conversations? You've got to go into yourself and you got to do your self work. How is this serving me to keep holding it on? How is it making my life better for me to hold on to this? What is it getting in the way of? And maybe in doing that self-reflection, you can say, you know, this don't make sense.
And if it doesn't add to your life, let it go.
Be
Let
done
it go.
with it.
Release
Be done with it.
So forgiveness is a process of release.
Yes.
And once you release, you'll have that freedom. But in order to get that, I do see we have to come through God because
Yes.
we don't have the power to do it ourselves.
Right.
Would everybody please, I'm going to end it there. Give a warm round of applause. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all. Thank you. And I am going to turn it over to Sister Miriam, and we're going to go ahead and leave. But I want to thank them again. And I want to remind you, and I'm sure Sister Miriam is going to remind you, please come tomorrow. More of a great thing. Thank you.
Peace and love, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Peace and love.
Was that awesome? Oh my God. Was that needed? Amen. As Dr. Sherry was saying, tomorrow, for you all that are married or engaged and have set a date, they're going to be with us with the marriage ministry on tomorrow after the second service. And so it's going to be absolutely fantastic. At this time, if you all would like to give an offering, they're going to pass around the buckets. And while they're doing that, I just want to make a few announcements. Anytime that we have service here for women ministry, only go on our e-newsletter. We will let you know. And that's why we always get your address, because we will send you all texts to let you know when we're having Joy Girl. There has been a site that somehow, I don't know if it's been hacked or whatever, but it said that Your Girl was canceled. And a lot of people looked on that site. Quite a few people looked on that site. So never go on those sites. Always go to our e-newsletter. And also we will send you a personal text and personal emails. Amen. Amen. Also, I just want to just thank God. Thank you both. Thank all three of you all. You all three are just absolutely amazing. Dr. Sherry, thank you so much. Mrs. Myra, Suleiman, thank you all so much. Oh my goodness. Come on, let's give them a hand again. That was absolutely amazing. Amazing. Now, how many of you feel like we need to see them again sometime this year? Can we make that happen? Please. Can we make that happen? We're gonna make that happen real soon. Someone said, please. We're gonna make that happen real soon. We're gonna say the next couple of months, we're gonna check their schedule and see can they come back. So I want you to invite all your family, all your friends, amen, to be here. So as we close out, you will stand to your feet. We serve a mighty, awesome God. A mighty, awesome God. You all have put prayers on the prayer wall. Those prayers, we've gotten them all, and we're going to take them, and we have a prayer team that meets every Wednesday. And we're going to take those prayers before the Lord. And I also am going to let Pastor Salters lay hands on them and pray over them as well. So don't think you're just doing something. No, we're going to pray over all those prayers, And also, before we have Suleiman and Myra back, even as today, since it's fresh on your mind, if you have any questions and you didn't get get an opportunity to ask, write them down, and we're going to pass it on to them so they'll be ready for those two when they come back. Amen. We'll know what direction to go. Because when I tell you they're full of wisdom, oh my God, full of wisdom, understanding and wisdom straight from God. Could you feel the peace of God up in here? Could you feel the anointing in here? So anointed. And before we leave out, I want to ask Dr. Sherry, I'm going to pray us out, but I want to ask Dr. Sherry and Myra and Suleiman come up here one more time, because I want to ask them a question, because since our single, how many of you all are single? Okay, wave them up, put your hands up. Okay, I want you all to, they won't be with us in the marriage ministry, but I want to help the singles. A lot of times single women, and single men, because we have some of them here as well, the men too. And sometimes they feel like they may have low self-esteem, that something's wrong with them while they're not married. What can you say to them? Because sometimes people think they frame their world around marriage. And so what do you have to say to them, to our single? Because they won't say it, but they walk around and they look at people that are married.
Well, first of all, we do a single ministry, do single workshops for single people, a workshop for singles. And in that workshop, we show you, we share with you a lot about why you choose who you're choosing, a lot about your childhood, a lot of things to give you a better idea so that when you go forth and you do, if it is your desire to get married, you go forth, you know so much more about yourself and you know what's attracting you to certain people. It's a really deep workshop. It's a good workshop. Suleiman?
No, I think you're on it. The idea of being able to do the work that you need to do on yourselves, so that when I do step out there, I know who I am. I know who I am, and I show up that way. Okay? When I walk in a room, when I walk into the room, there's a certain persona that takes place. And it's all about you. How do you show up? Am I presenting myself in a way that's inviting? Do I know what I'm inviting? Do I know, have I allowed myself to explore who I am enough to feel comfortable with me? Because if I'm not loving me, why am I going to expect somebody else to love me? You know? So it's as I mentioned earlier, the time for reflection is right now. Don't may not be the right word. Allow yourselves to experience life in all aspects of it. Don't get caught in one routine. This world has a lot for us to see. Travel, experiences, places to go, things to do. Atlanta is full of that. How am I showing up? You know, Myra talked about taking some time going to a movie, taking some time going to maybe a play, or going to the museum, or going to an exhibit, finding ways to put you out there and walk around and greet and be around people, volunteer for stuff. There's so much to do. So put yourself priority. Use this time that God has given you to prepare you for the season when it's coming your way, and it's going to be there, and it will come. Trust in that. You know, maybe right on the mirror in the morning when you look at it. I love you. You are the most important person to me. I get excited thinking about you. Say those things to yourself that feeds your soul and your spirit. God loves me.
That's right.
God knows what's best for me. And right now is just a preparation time for me. Hold on to the positives and invest in those. Invest in your qualities, who you are, and continue to grow in that.
Only thing I would add
Thank
to
you.
that
Yes.
is just because you're single, there's nothing wrong with you. You get so much pressure. You hear me? There is nothing wrong with you because society says you need to be married or booted up or whatever the case is. That's not necessarily so. And so you cannot define yourself as a single person through the eyes of the media, through the eyes of other people's judgment. Don't do that to yourself. Love yourself. Everything that they've said, I want to ditto that. But I also want to say, what's for you is for you. And your time and your season is coming. And it doesn't look like the other person's season. It doesn't look like the other person's timing. But your season, your timing is coming. And if your season doesn't mean that you have a mate, understand it wasn't for you. And sometimes we get into situations we don't need to be because we're going to make something happen. And we don't need to make it happen. God already has a plan for us.